Chapter 1. Mumbai was as crowded as ever. Nothing seemed to have changed. 12 years ago, Shamita had bid goodbye to this city. And now she was back. She was quite content with what she had accomplished. She was now a successful artist living in Paris. Her work was celebrated in galleries across Europe, and soon she was going to open her own gallery in Singapore. She had made something of herself, despite the accident. The taxi driver regaled her with stories of how Mumbai was an ever-changing city. Every day he would drive close to 75 people from one part of the city to another. Shamita tried to drown out his voice and focused on what she would have to do in the upcoming days. Geet was marrying the man of her dreams. She had endured hours of Geet rambling on about how Karan was her soulmate and how happy they were. Geet and Karan were high school sweethearts. Shamita hated that phrase. She hated it as much as she hated the other phrase that people all across the world swore by, love at first sight. I mean, seriously. Shamita had asked Mia, her flatmate in Paris, how can you fall in love with someone at first sight? Mia had smiled softly and told her that she would know one day. Shamita had brushed off her comment as coming from someone who was ruled by pregnancy hormones. Mia was almost 9 months pregnant. The father of her baby was her boyfriend of 15 years. When Shamita had asked her why she didn't want to leave with Michael, Mia told her that they were not ready. Another term Shamita did not get. Her brother Shaunak constantly teased her by saying that she shouldn't be living in Paris. According to him, his sister should live in a village in a mud hut. But Shaunak didn't get her it either. Nobody did. Nobody knew that Shamita had fallen in love once, irrevocably. It was a secret that she kept to herself. Jairam Nair. Just his name was enough to set Shamita's heart aflutter. He had been her best friend when they were in school. They had been inseparable, joined at the hip. Some of the teachers would tease them. Thinking about those times made Shamita smile. Even after so many years, she still remembered each and every moment she had spent with Jai. Some of the best years of her life were spent in school along with her best friends, Jai, Geet and Karan. She and Jai had been boarders. Geet and Karan were day scholars and lived with their parents. Shamita's father had been an officer in the Indian Army and was therefore posted to some of the most remote places in the country. During her early years, she had also travelled with her parents. But when she was promoted to Standard 8, her parents had made a conscious decision to not have her hop schools, and so she stayed in Mumbai, not moving when her father was transferred. She closed her eyes to drain out the noise of the city as well as the chit-chat the taxi driver insisted on maintaining. The last day she had met Jai had been nearly 12 years ago on the last day of school at the railway station. She had to go to Kolkata for her cousin's wedding. She was going by train to Delhi, and from there her brother Shaunak would fly with her to Kolkata. Jai had spent the previous night in Shamita's hostel room, climbing on through the window after the warden had slept. They had spent the night huddled together over a bunch of history notes on previous year's question papers, preparing for their last exam. Every now and then, Jai would crack a joke about their history teacher, and Shamita would start cackling so hard that she would have tears streaming down her cheeks. Jai would always say that she was the only girl he knew who could laugh like nobody was watching. "You even snort, Mithi," he would say, and a pillow would be flung in his direction. But the next day after the paper, as Shamita bid goodbye to all her friends and teachers, Jai was nowhere to be seen. She hated to think that he was celebrating the end of the exams with Aisha, his latest girlfriend. She despised the girl. She waited for him for as long as she could, but finally she had to leave for the railway station. She stuffed her luggage into the boot of the taxi and climbed into the back seat of the old Fiat. Clutching her backpack, which she had the card she had picked up for Jai 2 months ago, she told the driver to take her to the station. In the front passenger seat sat Sunil Kaka, the school's attendant. The matron had asked him to drop Shamita to the station, make sure she was comfortably seated, and then return. The old man struck up a conversation with the taxi driver. Angrily dashing the tears that were forming in her eyes, Shamita cursed Aisha, then Jai, and then Aisha again. Upon reaching the station, she frantically scanned the crowds for any sign of Jai, but she couldn't see him. She got into the first-class compartment and stored her luggage under her seat. Then she sat down and waited, willing her best friend to make a final appearance and at least say goodbye. But none of that happened. As the train left the station, Shamita was beyond upset. She thought she would give Jai the card she had picked up from Archie's and finally tell him how she felt. She felt betrayed. The train suddenly jerked to a screeching halt. Shamita peered out of her window to see 2 constables running down the tracks. When the door to her bogie was wrenched open, Jai stood there, still wearing his school uniform and bearing 2 ice cream cups in his hand, and said with a hint of anger, "Thought you will leave without saying goodbye to me, Mithi?" He was angry. How dare he, Shamita thought. You were supposed to come with me to the station, Jai. Where were you? She inquired in an angry hiss. I was in the staff room, he replied. Shamita was perplexed. What were you doing in there? That's between Miss Jacinta and me, was his bristling response. But Shamita was still angry. Where is Aisha? She asked beatingly. Who? It was Jai's turn to look confused now. Aisha, your girlfriend, where is she? Jai took a moment to reply. Taking a deep breath, he said, You really think Aisha is my girlfriend, Mithi? Yes. Here we go, Madam Ji. The taxi driver announced that they had arrived at Geet's house. Shamita sat up with a jerk and realized that she had fallen asleep on the way. Annoyed with the driver for not letting her sleep a little longer and at the same time relieved that she wouldn't have to relive the climax of her dream again, she got out of the car, paid him the fare and hauled her bags to the porch. Shamu! Here we go, she thought. Geet came screaming to the front veranda and enveloped Shamita in a bone-crushing hug. Shamita hugged her right back. Though she was very happy for her friend, Shamita felt a small pang of envy for the girl who had everything going for her. Geet was a typical Indian bride. She was fair with beautiful almond-shaped eyes, long black hair that fell way past her waist and the perfect hourglass figure. She was a jewellery designer and had showrooms all over India. Shamita was very happy for her friend, she really was. But there were times when she wished she could have switched places with Geet, just so that she could be with her high school love. But Shamita knew she was nothing like Geet. Her complexion was dusky and she had light brown eyes that were too big for her face. Her hair was brown and curly and her figure, which had once been like an hourglass, was not quite the same now. She called herself chubby, and at just 5 feet 2 inches, that wasn't a good thing at all. The wedding house was a sight to behold. Decked with flowers and streaming lights, there was music and dance flowing from every room in the house. Shamita was ushered to her room by Geet's mother, Neetu auntie, who chattered all the way. She went on and on about how blessed her daughter was to have found the man of her dreams and how Karan was such a wonderful son already. Apparently, he never made her feel like she was his mother-in-law. He had always seen her as his mother. Shamita was given her old room in Geet's house. It was an extension to Geet's room that her father had installed so that the two girls could sleep comfortably when Shamita used to come for sleepovers. In her opinion, Geet's father had gone a little overboard when all he really needed to do was to put another bed in Geet's room. But Deepak uncle had been known for his extravagance. Mumbai was always hot and humid, and today was no exception. But Shamita liked the hot and sticky weather. It reminded her of another time. A time when she and Jai would go to chowpatty from their hostels and have delicious local specialities like pani puri. After eating about 70 pani puris, that was their combined best, they would walk down to the beach and let the sand and waves take over the next hour of their lives. Shamita could never recall a time she was happier than she was then. Even the many delights of Paris, Amsterdam, Madrid, New York, Buenos Aires, and several other cities she had visited over the years paled in comparison to the pleasure and happiness she had felt in doing the simplest of things in Mumbai. But deep down, she knew why the rest of the places had never held any appeal for her. Jai wasn't there. And that was a problem even today. She hadn't seen him till now. She knew he would come for Geet's wedding. She had been mentally preparing herself to meet him, but she was annoyed that he wasn't there to receive her when she had arrived at Geet's house. She wondered if he was still upset about the last time they had met. But more than anything, she just wanted to see her best friend. It had been too long. Where the hell are you, Jai? Linking Road was as crowded as ever. There were swarms of people crowding each and every tiny store. About 50 people were crammed into shops that were probably no bigger than a minivan. Street children were scampering up and down on either side of the road. Beggars were begging for alms, car horns were blaring, buses were heaving, and Jairam Nair, best-selling author and closet poet, was waiting for his best friend Karan Walia to hurry up with his shopping. In his mind, Jai had already penned a few couplets in praise of his friend's time management qualities. Karan's last minute shopping was for his honeymoon, 2 pair of shorts and a few pairs of beachwear sleepers. Karan was the only son of one of the country's richest industrialists and of Mumbai's most respected citizens, but clearly that didn't deter him from shopping for his honeymoon on Linking Road. Jairam, or Jai, as he was known to his loved ones, was most definitely annoyed. He knew for a fact that Karan was nowhere close to being done with his shopping. Based on his friend's track record, Jai was sure that Karan would easily take another hour to get done. But this, Jai would not allow. He needed to go to Geet's house. There was somebody there who he had to meet. Shamita Bose. Just a name was enough to bring a smile to his lips. All throughout school, they had been the best of friends. Even their teachers had called them inseparable. The two of them had the best of times, and the worst of times too. A voice inside his head reminded him. Mumbai had been good to him, he had to admit. 7 years ago, he returned from London, where he had completed his master's in English with a side major in creative writing, and the city had welcomed him with open arms once again. The initial days hadn't been easy, sharing apartments with untidy and temperamental people, not to mention rodents, cockroaches, and other forms of arachnoids, had most definitely not been easy. But the success of his first book turned his world around. Literary agents and publishers had flocked to him, and within no time at all, he had written 2 more bestsellers. Today, he had 5 bestsellers under his name, his latest one having made it to the New York Times bestsellers list, and a trilogy that he was working on. In all this, the one thing that had remained constant was his love for Mumbai. It had given him everything. He had built a new life here, and he was damn proud of that life. After another half an hour of silent mutiny, Jai was finally rewarded. Karan was miraculously done with his shopping and was now ready to go back to the hotel where his cousins and extended family were staying. Karan's parents had their own house in Mumbai, but he was staying at the hotel to spend more time with his cousins who had come for the wedding from different parts of the world. Jai dropped Karan back at the hotel and was on his way to Geet's house where his mobile phone rang. It was his sister calling to remind him that she and their mother would be arriving by the evening flight. God damn it. This meant he had just less than 3 hours before he had to be at the airport. Geet's house was about 30 minutes from the hotel, but the traffic in Mumbai was another story. As he drove to Geet's, Jai recalled the number of times he and Shamita would hop onto a bus during the weekends and go to Marine Drive. There they would binge on some chat and cutting chai before Shamita dragged him to the beach saying he had had enough to eat. Over the past 12 years, not a single day had gone by when he hadn't thought of his best friend. Life had changed immediately after school, priorities had shifted. He could never erase their last meeting from his memory. He had behaved badly. He knew he had. But he had been pushed. He had not known how to react to certain questions Shamita had asked. And for him, up until that moment, he had always considered Shamita as someone he could talk to about anything without worrying about how she would take it. She would give him her honest opinion always. But on that day, just after the paper, Jai's world had tilted off its already precarious axis. He had been called into the staff room by Miss Jacinta, their English teacher. She sat him down and told him how proud she was about how far he had come along. Jai had not had the best of childhoods, and his first few months in his new school had not been very good either. He had had difficulties in adjusting to the people around him, and his insecurities had been too many. It was Miss Jacinta who had helped him cope with all the added pressures and in adjusting to his new life as a boarder. She had always been his favorite teacher. "How was your paper, Jai?" she inquired kindly after he sat down. "It wasn't too bad, ma'am. I can't expect it to be any better than it was. History is not really my strong suit," he replied with a smile. "Yours and Shamita's, I'm sure," Miss Jacinta added. "Yes, Mithi's too," he said. "I like that name you have for her," she said with a smile. "I'm glad you two are such good friends." "Yes, we are. Thank you, madam," Jai said. "In fact, I must be off soon. Mithi has to leave for the railway station in a while. I need to go with her." "Is she just your friend, Jai?" Miss Jacinta fired another question. Jai took a moment to reply. He just stared blankly at his English teacher. He found it awkward that she chose to ask him something so personal. Yes, madam, she is just a friend," he said finally, fidgeting in his chair. After a pause which felt like an eternity to Jai, Miss Jacinta said, "Okay, but I want you to promise me one thing, Jai." She was teary-eyed now. "I want you to make something good of yourself. You are a wonderful young man with great potential. Do not waste your time worrying about the past. All the wrongs in the world have a way of correcting themselves. That's how things work. So do not burst your head over it, okay?" Jai looked at his teacher with a mixture of respect and gratitude. "Yes, madam, I promise." "You and Shamita are two of my favorite students. I know I'm not supposed to have favorites," she added hastily when she saw Jai's eyes widen. "I hope the two of you will always be good friends and not let time and distance come in the way. I've seen this happen to too many of my students," she added, her tears flowing freely now. Jai stood up and went over her desk and gave her a hug. He was really going to miss this kind-hearted woman, but as he bid goodbye As he bid her goodbye and walked out of the staff room, he thought about what she had said about him and Shamita. He didn't know what he was supposed to do to make of it. He glanced at his watch and realized he was really late. Mithi would have already left for the railway station, but not before cursing him, he was sure. He smiled as he recalled the number of times she would curse him in one day. His Mithi was one raging spitfire. 1 hour and 15 minutes later, Jai was at Geet's doorstep. He would have to leave for the airport in about 40 minutes. Would that be enough time to mend the bridges?